Hey everybody. So the NHL returns tonight, a bunch of games tonight. But before we start talking about the future, I want to do one more video taking a look back at the first part of this season, the pre-Christmas part of this season, almost halfway through, and look at some surprises. Who are the biggest surprises this season? Now for this video, I'm not going to be looking at players. I'm only strictly looking at teams. So which teams have been either surprisingly good or surprisingly bad. And these can be good or bad surprises. That's how I've got it split up here. We have the good side and then the bad side. And I'm going to talk about who I think are the 5 biggest surprises so far in the 2018-19 season. And let's do the good surprises first. And we're going to get right into it with a team that I think a lot of people thought would be better and should be better, but I don't think many people thought would be this good, and that is the Buffalo Sabres. Buffalo is having a tremendous season this year, obviously aided greatly by their 10-game win streak earlier in the season, but still 21-11-5. This is a legitimately good hockey team. They've outplayed, I think, even the highest expectations for them this season. At least reasonable expectations for them going into the season. They've been outstanding. I mean, Eichel is playing great. Jeff Skinner has completely changed the landscape of that team. Dahlin's having a great rookie season. Their defense as a whole has played much better. They're getting great goaltending from Carter Hutton and Linus Ullmark. They have a real 1-2 punch in net this year. The Buffalo has just been a lot better than I ever thought they would be. I think we all pretty much knew they weren't going to be the worst team in the league again. They had way too much talent for that. But who expected them to be right up there competing with Toronto and Boston and Tampa Bay in the Atlantic Division and be in third place in a solid playoff spot with 47 points through 37 games? And really, they're 5 points behind Toronto. They're 3 points ahead of Boston. They've been fantastic and much better than I think many of us ever thought that they would be. Another really good surprise this year, at least in my eyes. Another really good record. 10 games above 500 also. Leading the Pacific Division, the Calgary Flames. Calgary has been much better than I thought they would be. Again, 22-12-3, leading the Pacific Division ahead of the San Jose Sharks, ahead of the Vegas Golden Knights, ahead of the Anaheim Ducks. Calgary missed the playoffs last year. The year before, they got swept out by Anaheim in the first round. Calgary's a team that I think they made some additions in the offseason. They made a big trade with Carolina to get Elias Lindholm and Noah Hannafin. They brought in James Neal, who actually hasn't had that great of a season in Calgary, but they've added him in. And they're a team that I think people looked at and said, okay, maybe this should be a playoff team. They missed last year, but they should be at least contending for a playoff spot this year. Maybe they're a bubble wildcard team. Maybe they get third place in the Pacific. I don't think many people had them finishing any higher than third in the Pacific. Well, now they're in first place. They got a 2-point lead with a game in hand on San Jose. They have a 3-point lead with 2 games in hand on Vegas. They've got a game in hand and a 4-point lead on Anaheim. I mean, they're pretty solidly in first place right now, and certainly can be caught. There's still a long way to go, but they've had a really good season. Lindholm has been a fantastic addition. Gaudreau and Monahan are playing great. Matthew Tkachuk is having a breakout season offensively with his point production and goal scoring. A lot of things are going well for Calgary this season. I think goaltending remains the question mark, but so far it's been good enough, and Calgary's off to a great start this season. Now, we have to look at disappointments, because those are the two on the good side. We got three on the bad side. And the first one that a few immediately come to mind. But this team has just been an absolute disaster. And even though their record isn't, terribly below 500, compared to what they were expected to do, this season has been an absolute disaster. And that is the Philadelphia Flyers. 15, 16, and 4, 34 points in 35 games, well out of a playoff spot at this point. It's not been a good season for Philadelphia at all. Goaltending has been atrocious for them. It's been a major, major problem. Their defense hasn't been really that great at all. A lot of their young defensemen that people thought were going to really take off this season, Provorov hasn't been great. Gostisbehere had that great rookie season when he first came up, and it's kind of been all downhill since then. He hasn't really developed or gotten any better. Sanheim and Haig they're coming along, but they're not great defensemen. There's a lot not going right in Philadelphia, and while they have a lot of talent on the roster, that talent is not winning games, and they're not playing well together. And again, goaltending has been a huge, huge problem. So really, really disappointing, surprisingly disappointing season for Philadelphia. At another team, now this team was in a little bit of a different situation, but they missed the playoffs last year. Then they made a ton of off-season additions, and they were supposed to be really good. And they've been terrible. And that is the St. Louis Blues. 14, 16, and 4 this season. All the money they spent in free agency, the huge Ryan O'Reilly trade, none of it has made this team better. Not a single move has made this team better. They're worse than they were last year, and they missed the playoffs last year. And with that much talent on the roster, guys like Tarasenko, Shen, Schwartz, O'Reilly now, Pietrangelo, Bouwmeester, there's so much talent on that roster. You look at the St. Louis Blues on paper and you're like, wow, this should be a team that's right up there with Winnipeg and Nashville in the Central. And they're the second worst team in the division. They're worse than Dallas. They're worse than Minnesota. They're right down in near the bottom with Chicago. I mean, this season has been about as bad as it possibly could for the St. Louis Blues, and I don't see them turning it around this year. They're already in a huge, huge hole. Only 32 points in 34 games, well out of a playoff spot. They're in big trouble. I don't see them really doing much at all this season, other than maybe moving Pat Maroon at the trade deadline, maybe moving a defenseman or two if they can get a good return. I don't know. If I was in charge of St. Louis, I would be blowing this team up. But that's just me. I would be trading any older veteran guy that I can and trying to get some young prospects or draft picks in return and trying to have a quick turnaround rebuild and get some young, fresh talent in there. But I don't know what they're going to end up doing, but it has not been a good season for the St. Louis Blues. And lastly, I wouldn't say this is probably maybe the least surprising out of all of these bad teams. But you can't have the worst team in the league not on the bad surprises list, because they were a team that I thought had a chance, were going to be a playoff team. I thought they were going to be a playoff team, probably in the second or third spot in their division, and they're the worst team in the league, and that's the LA Kings. 14, 20, and 3, 31 points in 37 games. Just terrible, terrible season for LA. They can't score goals. Jonathan Quick missed a large portion of the first part of the season with injury. They've dug themselves a massive, massive hole to the point where this season is a complete loss. They've been playing better of late, and Jonathan Quick's back, and they're winning more games with him. But overall, this has just been a disaster of a season for the Kings. Ilya Kovalchuk has actually played pretty well. He's been scoring goals for them, but yeah, he's the only one. So it's kind of hard to win games when you only have one guy scoring goals. They're not as good defensively as they have been in the past, which has really been why they've been able to be a playoff team, is because of their defense. That's not there anymore. Just disaster of a season for the Kings as well. So overall, we have a couple of really good surprises. Buffalo and Calgary both having great seasons. Much better seasons, I think, than anyone predicted that they would. And we've had some really bad surprises as well. Philadelphia just throwing this year away. St. Louis, all those moves have ended up not working out. And LA has just been a total disaster this season. So those are my 5 biggest surprises so far in the 2018-19 season. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. Check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merch store are in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.